Right, good morning. Can you hear me, students? Please pass me a message. Am I audible to
Yes,
you?
sir.
Right, okay. We will start the session. We have been discussing about our prescribed novel, The Prince and the Pauper. Last week we gave some kind of introduction, and today we have right about the introduction related to different characters. Right. So I think we wrote about characters. Actually, we have to start with we wrote about. Did we write about Edward Tudor? Did we complete this part? Please pass me a message.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Good. So did we write about Tom Candy as well?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So they can be identified as the major characters. Basically, Edward Tudor and Tom Candy can be identified as the major characters. There are other characters as well. So these are the major characters that we can identify when it comes to the story. Right. Then we have King Henry VIII, the loving father of Edward, Prince of Wales. He is anxious to see his son installed the heir apparent before it is divorced and the prince is mad, right? So when Tom Canty and Edward Tudor actually changed their roles, Edward Tudor's father, that is actually Henry VIII, he was totally upset because he thought that Edward Tudor has gone mad, right? But later he realized that these children have actually exchanged their roles. So his character is also very much important to us when we discuss about the story. You can write about him, King Henry VIII, the loving father of Edward, Prince of Wales. He is anxious to see his son installed as the heir, apparent before it is discovered that the prince is mad, right? So he is also another character that we have to pay our attention. So hurry up and write down. My dear students, we have been discussing about our second novel. This is known to be Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain. We have completed our first novel, that is Vendor of Sweets by R.K. Narayan. So now we are discussing about our second novel. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you have finished. Last week we explained about different types of characters, what kind of characters that we have, and we gave some kind of introduction to the novel as well. And we discussed the summary of the novel as well. These are the points that we have highlighted. So if you have finished, please pass me a message. I need 5 students to complete. Hurry up. Right, okay. We will move on to the next part. I hope you guys have completed. Right, good. So we will move on to the other characters, right? We have other characters. We are going to discuss about John Canty. John Canty is known as Tom Canty's father. This particular person is a drunkard. He is an alcoholic. He is into alcohol and he is always abusing his own son, right? Mistreating, ill-treating his own son. So unlike Edward Tudor's father, Tom Canty's father is kind of an abusive father, right? So his character is also very much important to us. John Canty, the unloving and harsh father of Tom Canty, he keeps his son in tow solely so that young Tom can make money for him, right? So he is actually using his own son in order to earn money, right? He is using his own son in order to earn money. So he is also another important character for us, right? So hurry up and write down about him as well. This is actually Tom Canty's father, John Canty. So we are discussing about different types of characters that we identify in this particular short story. Right. If you have finished, please pass me a message. Hurry up. Now they comes. Fourth game, that is not what it happened. That is what we call situational lighting. That is how verbal lighting. Situational lighting can be right. We are expecting the crowd to act in a quite humorous, happy, and delightful manner, not only on the stage but also inside the house. But that is not going to happen. I experience that is not going to happen. That is what the situation. Even though he makes other people laugh on the stage, even though he makes other people laugh. Saying that okay, this person is happy, is performing really well. Audience can be like. Okay, so we will move on to the next part. I hope you guys have completed, right? So this is actually about John Candy, Tom Candy's father. There are other characters that we have to pay our attention. Number one, Bet, Nan, and Mother Candy, the sisters and mother of Tom Candy, who try to protect him from John Candy's brutality. So I told you that Tom Candy's father is actually using him, abusing this particular boy in order to take money from him, right? So that he is a very much abusive father. On the other hand, Tom Candy was very much fortunate to find his mother, Beth, Nan, and Mother Candy, the sisters and mother of Tom Candy, who try to protect him from John Candy's brutality. Father Andrew's character is very much important. Father Andrew is the person who provides education to Tom Candy. Father Andrew, the good retired priest who teaches Tom how to read and write, and also teaches him a bit of Latin, a talent which he later uses at court, right? So he was actually taught Latin as well. The Lady Jane Grey, the Lady Elizabeth, and the Lady Mary, half sisters to Edward, Prince of Wales, at various times they are kind of sarcastic to Tom Candy, whom they believe to be the real prince, right? So there are other characters that we have to be very much familiar with. We have a character called the Lady Jane Grey, and the Lady Elizabeth, and the Lady Mary. So these three sisters are very much important. They are actually half sisters to Edward, Prince of Wales. Half sisters refers to not from the same mother, right? At various times, they are kind of sarcastic to Tom Candy. They are ill-treating, neglecting Tom Candy. They were actually under the impression that this is the real prince or else the Edward Tudor. So they always actually misunderstood Tom Candy as the Edward Tudor. So they are actually ill-treating, mistreating this particular boy as well. So those characters are very much important to us. So they are the basic characters that you have to pay your attention, right? These are the basic characters. So definitely you have to pay your attention to these characters, right? So I hope that you have bought the book. The book is very much important. Please make sure to have the book with you, right? So we are going to read chapter wise and we are going to write the analysis after reading it very carefully. So this is the second novel that we are following. Sometimes in your schools, they may have started this particular novel, or sometimes they may have finished this particular novel, but nevertheless, you can study from the very beginning. You can start from the very beginning and you can get an idea what kind of important quotations, what kind of important areas that you have to highlight when it comes to your ordinary level examination. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Right, okay. So we discussed about the most important characters, right? Then we have other characters like the Lord Thetford and the Lord St. John, the two lords of the realm in change of overseeing the welfare of the Prince of Wales. Miles Hendon, a diamond in the rough, so to speak. He is a good friend of young Edward Tudor. Miles Hendon is the person who provides that security to Edward Tudor, right? And he represents the best of Englishmen. He thinks that the young prince is ill, and because he feels sorry for him, he becomes his protector as they wander throughout the English countryside, right? So Miles Hendon can be identified as a very positive character. He is the person who is providing actually the support to Edward Tudor when Edward Tudor exchanged his particular role with Tom Canty, right? Miles Hendon is the person who is providing that support to him because Miles Hendon is actually from British military. He is under the wrong impression that this particular boy is ill. So, because of his attitude, he provides some kind of security to this particular boy, right? So, they are the basic characters that we have. So, then we have the story, then we have to read that very carefully, and then we have to understand the story. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Hurry up. So this is the second. This is the second. No, right. This is the second video log that we are doing regarding your novel. Right. We have started Prince and Pauper. Hurry up and write down. Right, okay, so we will move on, right? I hope that you guys have identified the major characters and there are sub characters as well. When it comes to a novel, basically, you have to pay attention for both characters, right? So when we discuss about Vendor of Sweets, I told you, you have to pay attention towards Jagannath and Mali. They can be identified as the major characters. So in this particular novel, we have Tom Canty and Edward Tudor, right? Those are the major characters that we have to pay our attention, right? So based on them, we are going to discuss a lot of themes. So major characters are very much important and minor characters are also equally important. Don't think that minor characters are not that much important, right? Students have the tendency of thinking like that, but you should not think like that. Just like the major characters, minor characters are also very much important when it comes to the plot of the novel, plot of the short story, right? So all the characters are very much important and you have to know their names. You have to be familiar with their names, right? Sometimes you may not have heard these names before. Sometimes you may have done this particular novel in your school. So that students will be very much familiar with these names, right? Okay, so we will move on to the novel, right? I hope you guys have both the novel, so you can refer to the novel. We will move on to the novel. We will read, right? And we will try to understand what does it say about the first part, right? Okay. Check whether you guys can see the screen. Right, okay. So we are going to read the novel, right? We are going to read the novel. So you have to have the book with you. It is important because there are certain passages that you have to highlight, right? There are certain passages that you have to highlight, and there are certain important words that you have to highlight and find the meanings, right? So make sure to go through the novel, right? Okay. So, so we are going to start from chapter number 1, right? Chapter number 1 is about the birth of the prince and the pauper, right? Chapter number 1 is about the birth of the prince and the pauper, right? This is chapter number 1. I hope you guys can see the screen, right? Check whether your book is very similar to the description given in the given on the screen. Is that the same description that they have given? Please pass me a message, the ones who has got the book.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. So we will start. We are going to start from chapter number 1, right? We are going to start from chapter number 1. Chapter number 1 is not that much lengthy. Chapter number 1 is not that much lengthy. So we will read a couple of chapters today and we will go to the teacher's note next week. In the ancient city of London, on a certain autumn day in the second quarter of the 16th century, a boy was born to a poor family of the name of Canty. Now, if you read the first few lines of the very first passage, you will realize that the writer or else the narrator has given the exposition or else the setting of the story is quite clearly explained by the narrator. This is what we call the setting of the story, right? The explanation is actually given by him in which country, right? In which time period, and the place is actually quite clearly mentioned. This is what we call the exposition, right? Or else we call the setting of the novel. Now we know in which country the situation takes place. We know what kind of family background is there when we discuss about these characters and the time period, right? So the time period is also given, right? During the autumn, right? And the year is also given, that is in 16th century, right? A boy was born to a poor family of the name of Canty, who did not want him. Now that is very much important. You have to highlight, right? So here I will highlight that who did not want him, right? Who did not want him. So that part is very much important, right? So this particular line clearly shows us children were actually taken as a burden, right? So Canty is known to be a burden. So his family members, they never wanted him. Now, if you compare the situation with today's reference, you will realize that today parents will do anything and everything to save their children. Parents will do anything and everything in order to show their love and respect to their children. But at that time period, during the 16th century, right, since because he is a poor child, he was a poor child, so most probably the parents won't be able to provide all the food and beverages for this particular boy. So as a result of that, the writer says, who did not want him, right? So his family members, even his family members, did not want him to live, did not want him to survive in this particular world. So from that particular instance, you can come to a conclusion saying that, okay, this is the scenario, right? The rampant poverty can be identified, right? Because the writer has clearly explained he belongs to a poor family, right? He belongs to a poor family. So later we will realize that, later we will discuss about the poverty and the problems actually faced by this particular boy. Now, from the very beginning, you can understand about the poverty. So poverty and rich and poor, right? Or else the superiority and inferiority complex can be identified as one of the major themes in this particular novel, right? When we read the novel, you will realize that Mark Twain has paid a lot of attention towards the superiority complex and inferiority complex. Some people are rich, they are enjoying a lot of luxuries, and people show a lot of respect for them because of their high class attitude and because of their nobility. On the other hand, some people are poor, right? Due to their poverty, they don't get equal chances in the society. So they will not be able to climb up the social ladder due to their poverty and uneducated behavior. So this is what actually highlighted by Mark Twain. This is what actually highlighted by Mark Twain. This can be identified as one of the major themes when it comes to the story. This can be identified as one of the major themes when it comes to the story, right? On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor. On the same day, now that is important, right? So Edward Tudor is also actually born same day, right? On the same day, that is important, right? We have to highlight that. On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor, who did want him, right? Who did want him? Now you can understand the comparison if you pay your attention. Edward Tudor is actually born to a rich family, or else we can use the word noble family, right? He was born to a noble family. Now both are children, right? Both are children. Both were born on the same day. But see the comparison, see the social disparity. See the social disparity. I hope you guys can understand the social disparity, right? Another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor, who did not want him, right? Who did want him? I'm sorry, who did want him? So that rich family is actually the royal family. So Edward Tudor belongs to the royal family. Now you can understand when we refer to the major two characters, what kind of contrast is actually created by the narrator. So Tom Canty belongs to a poor family, right? So his parents actually did not want him not because that they don't love him, but because like they didn't have enough money to afford him, right? They didn't have enough money to buy all these food and beverages for him. On the other hand, if you refer to Edward Tudor, right, from the birth of Edward Tudor, right, the royal family was quite delighted because they always needed a successor. They always needed an heir to the throne. So the king was really happy because from a boy, you can take your name to the next generation, right? So there is kind of an heir to the throne. So they always needed a boy and they got one. So they were really happy about Edward Tudor, right? All England wanted him to, not only the family, all England wanted him to, right? This is important. This is very much important. We have to highlight that one as well. Not only the family, all England wanted him, right? All England also wanted him. So you can understand, right? When it comes to the royal family, what kind of luxuries, what kind of sophisticated social status actually enjoyed by these people who belong to the royal family, Can you understand? That is important, right? England had so longed for him and hoped for him and prayed God for him that now that he was really come, the people went nearly mad for joy, right? Not only the royal family, but also the entire England, right? All the citizens who lived in England, right? England had so longed for him and hoped for him and prayed God for him that now that he was really come, the people went nearly mad for joy. Mere acquaintances hugged and kissed each other and cried. Mere acquaintances means like even the laborers, right? Even the laborers, even the lowest people who belong to the lowest category or else lowest social class, they were happy about with the birth of Edward Tudor. So now you can understand how contrast is actually taken into consideration, where nobody accepted, nobody showed that kind of love and affection or else that kind of happiness with the birth of Tom Canty, but with the birth of Edward Tudor, you can understand how people reacted to that situation. Not only the noble family, but also the entire England. How they reacted to this particular situation. That is something very much important. How they reacted, right? Even the lowest labor who works in the court or else who is living outside the court, even the normal average citizens, even they were really happy about this birth. They were really happy about this birth. This is what we have to highlight. So we will move on from there. Right? And hope for him and prayed God for him that now that he was really come, the people went nearly mad for joy. Mere acquaintances hugged and kissed each other and cried. Everybody took a holiday, and high and low, rich and poor, feasted and danced and sang, and got very mellow, and they kept this up for days and nights together. So they enjoyed with this particular message for a long period of time, right? Not the noble family, but the family members, right? Okay, or else the people who lived in that particular country, they were overjoyed, right? For a long period of time, they celebrated. How did they celebrate? According to the writer clearly uses a set of words, set of verbs, right, together. It's a very powerful diction where he says, right, feasted and danced and sang, rich and poor, high and low. So here we can understand the contradictory. The contradiction is actually created. Doesn't matter whether you are high and low, rich or poor. This particular message brought some kind of delight to each and every citizen. This particular message brought some kind of delight to each and every citizen. So they really enjoyed. That is what actually happened. Feasted and danced and sang and got very mellow. And they kept this up for days and nights together. By day, London was sight to see, with gay banners waving from every balcony and housetop and splendid pageants marching along, right? So they had certain pageants and people who lived in these balconies, they waved the flag. So each and every person, now according to the narrator, what you can realize here is that each and every person showed some kind of love and affection, some kind of delight when it comes to the birth of Edward Tudor. So the narrator tries to explain you when it comes to the birth of these noble people, right? Everybody will actually enjoy that, right? But Tom Canty also was born on the same day, right? Same time period, same country, but unfortunately, that kind of happiness, that kind of delight was not actually enjoyed by people, because the reason is Tom Canty belongs to the lower class. Tom Canty belongs to the lower class. So the narrator clearly shows us the class difference, right? When you refer to this particular passage, what you can realize is the class difference. Narrator shows a very powerful explanation towards class difference. That is something very much important. Right? So England and so long for him and hope for him and prayed God for him, that now that he was really come, the people went nearly mad for joy. Mere acquaintances, we discussed about that part. By night, it was again a sight to see, with its great bonfires at every corner and its troops of revelers to see, with its great bonfires at every corner and its troops of revelers making merry around them. There was no talk in all England but of the new baby Edward Tudor, Prince of Wales, who lay lapped in scales and satins, unconscious of all this fuss, and not knowing the great lords and ladies were tending him and watching over him and not caring either. But there was no talk about the other baby, Tom Canty. So the writer says, right, even though people actually enjoyed themselves, even though the noble family enjoyed themselves about this particular birth, right, Edward Tudor was sleeping. He was a small baby. He didn't have any idea whatsoever about these, what you call, occasions and these celebrations. He was a small boy. This is actually given to us. This description is actually given to us by the narrator, right? So Edward Tudor didn't have any idea about this. He was sleeping. He was a small baby, right? But when it comes to the situation of the other baby, right, I hope you guys can see the screen. But there was no talk about the other baby. Tom Canty left in his poor rags, right? So in comparison to Edward Tudor, see the situation actually faced by Tom Canty. Poor rags, except among the family of paupers. Pauper means a beggar, right? Pauper means another word for beggar. So professionally, Tom Canty's family, they were known to be professional beggars, professional paupers. Pauper means a beggar, right? So what is their the way of living? They had only one way of living, that is actually begging. They went one house to another house and they begged from people, right? So that is what they did. So Tom Canty's father actually used him in order to beg money from people, right? That is why he wanted actually this particular boy. Except among the family of paupers whom he had just come trouble with his presence. So his presence actually brought a lot of troubles to the family. Now you can imagine the situation, right? This pauper's birth actually got a lot of problems, actually brought a lot of problems to the family, because now the family members definitely they have to work really hard in order to provide food and all for this small child, right? That is not going to be easy because they are beggars, right? They are professionally begging, so they don't have any fixed deposit or something to actually pay for this particular boy, and it is actually known to be a burden. It is a huge burden for the family. So from the first chapter, we can understand the social status and the social disparity, right? The novelist has actually explained to us about the social system and the social disparity when it comes to the London society during the 16th century, right? People actually enjoyed the birth of the prince, right, Edward Tudor, but the same enjoyment, the same happiness was not actually gained by Tom Canty because he was a poor person, right? So this is the explanation from the first chapter. We are moving to the second chapter. We are going to discuss about Tom's early life, right? We are going to discuss about Tom's early life. Let us skip a number of years. So now this situation actually starts after some years. Now, let's say actually 5 to 6 years, right? From there onwards, now we are going to discuss about what kind of troubles and tribunals actually faced by Tom, right? So this is what we are going to discuss. London was 1500 years old and was a great town for that day. It had 100,000 inhabitants, something double as many. The streets were very narrow and crooked and dirty, especially in the past where Tom Canty lived. Now the writer is actually giving us a very good explanation about London, right, as a city, right, due to industrialization, due to a lot of other problems, a lot of people actually came to London. As a result of that, unemployment actually took place because a lot of people actually lived in London. That is what we call overpopulation. But most of the people, they did not get jobs. So most of them were unemployed. So they used to do a lot of odd jobs, and some of them actually engaged in begging, right? They were known to be paupers, right? So London was 1500 years old. That was a great town for that day. It had 100,000 inhabitants, something double as many. The streets were very narrow and crooked and dirty, especially in the part where Tom Canty lived, which was not far from London Bridge, right? So if you refer to certain poets like William Blake, they have written a lot of poems about this London city, right? So what kind of troubles and tribunals actually faced by people due to industrialization, right? What kind of problems actually faced by these ladies, these children due to industrialization, overpopulation, unemployment, industrialization, prostitution, child exploitation. These are the major problems actually occurred at that time period, right? So a lot of people who lived in villages, they came to London because they identified London is the city where they can find some amount of money, right? Exactly, right? So then they identified that, okay, we have to go to the London city, but the problem was overpopulation, right? So a lot of people came to the London city. As a result of that, overpopulation actually occurred. So people didn't have enough jobs to do. So they had to do different types of illegal jobs. Even children, they had to engage in actually stealing and all the other odd work. Most of the females, they had to engage in prostitution. They sold their body, right? And most of the males, they became murderers and they became thieves because they didn't have any alternative, right? So this is what actually happened in London at that time period. So Tom Canty used to beg, right? So his entire family used to beg. They were known to be paupers. That is their professional job. They engaged in that in a much more professional manner, right? That is important. So we will move on. The houses were of wood with the second story projecting over the first and the third sticking its elbows out behind the second. The higher the houses grew, the broader they grew, right? The higher the houses grew, the broader they grew. They were skeletons of strong crisscross beams with solid material between coated with plaster. The beams were painted red or blue or black according to the owner's taste, and this gave the houses a very picturesque look. The windows were small, glazed with little diamond-shaped panes, and they opened outward on hinges like doors. So here, Mark Twain has given us a very broad description about these houses where these paupers lived, right? They were not that much big, right? And most of the paupers actually they lived together, and the houses were very much attractive to the other people when they look at the houses outside, but inside it was a very small house where a lot of people cannot survive. The house which Tom Fathers lived in was up a whole little pocket called Offal Court. The Offal Court is the person where Tom Canty's father and Tom Canty's family members lived. That is what we call Offal Court. Out of Pudding Lane, it was small, decayed, and rickety, but it was packed full of wretchedly poor families. It was packed full of wretchedly poor families, right? So rampant with poverty. Poverty can be identified as one of the major problems, right? If you refer to the short novel, you will understand. When we discuss about Tom Canty, you will realize that poverty can be identified as the most powerful problem, right? So Canty's tribe occupied a room on the 3rd floor. The mother and father had a sort of bedstead in the corner. Mother and father had a bed. But Tom, his grandmother, and his 2 sisters, bed and Nan, were not restricted. They had all the floors to themselves and might sleep where they choose, right? So beds were only given to mother and father, right? They had a bed. But all the other family members, including Tom and his 2 sisters and grandmother, right? All the 4 have to sleep on the ground, right? They were not given even a blanket, right? So this is the scenario. This is the situation. So now you can understand in this kind of family exactly Tom will become a burden. There is no doubt about that. Tom will definitely become a burden, right? So now you can understand the condition, the social condition of Tom Canty, right? There were the remains of a blanket or 2 and some bundles of ancient and dirty straw, but these could not rightly be called beds, for they were not organized. They were kicked into a general pile mornings and selections made from the mass at night for service, right? So they had to select a place to sleep because they didn't have a proper place to sleep. So when we read this particular paragraph, in the 2nd paragraph, what we can realize here is that the suffocating situation that Tom had to face, right, because of his poverty, right, rampant with poverty. So Tom and his sisters and his grandmother had a miserable life. So their miserable life is quite clearly portrayed by the writer. This is what we call miserable life, right? They led a very miserable life, very miserable life. Bet and Nan were 15 years old twins. They were twins actually. They were good-hearted girls. So the writer has directly given some kind of information about these characters. This is what we call direct characterization. So when it comes to a novel, when it comes to a short story, right? Now you can understand here, right? The characterization can be given in 2 ways. Where we have direct characterization and indirect characterization. So direct characterization means the narrator himself explains about that particular character. So here, if you pay your attention, where he says they were good-hearted girls, the writer himself accepted the fact that, okay, I should explain about these characters. That is what we call direct characterization. Then we have indirect characterization, where the writer is not going to explain about the characters. By referring to their behavioral patterns, by referring to their conversations, their dialogues, and their actions, we can realize what kind of characteristics are there in that particular character, right? So basically, either the writer can label the characters, or else by referring to the behavioral patterns of that particular character, we can come to a conclusion that this is the behavior of that particular character. So characterization can be built in 2 ways, right? Unclean, clothed in rags, and profoundly ignorant, right? So education was actually not given to them. So I told you, when it comes to the industrial England, most of these children, they did not receive proper education, because at that time period, nobody was there for them in order to ask them to do their studies, right? So only very few people, only a very few amount of students got the privilege to study, right? So these children, they were ignorant, right? So they were very young, but they were very much ignorant. Their mother was like them, but the father and the grandmother were a couple of friends. They got drunk whenever they could. When they fought each other or anybody else who came in the way, they cursed and swore always, drunk or sober. John Canty was a thief and his mother a beggar. So even though John Canty is known to be a beggar, he did not engage in begging. John Canty is actually known to be a thief. John Canty and his mother, they were very good friends. They both drank together and they had their fights. But when it comes to Tom's mother and Tom's two sisters, right, they were very much innocent, right? They didn't have any alternative in their life. So father did not give them enough money to survive. So they didn't have any alternative. Right. They made beggars of the children, right? But failed to make thieves of them. Among but not of the dreadful rabble that inhabited the house was a good old priest whom the king had turned out of house and home with a pension of a few farthings. And he used to get the children aside and teach them right ways secretly. Father Andrew also taught Tom a little Latin and how to read and write, and would have done the same with the girls, right? So now, father and grandmother were not able to actually turn these children to thieves, right? So they did not become thieves. So now we are discussing about another positive character, who is the character Father Andrew. Father Andrew is known to be a Christian clergy who actually provided some education for these children, right? Not only for Tom Canty, but also for the other girls, right? Whatever the knowledge that he has gained free of charge, he provided that knowledge to these innocent children. So his character is very much positive when it comes to the story, right? Father Andrew also taught Tom a little Latin and how to read and write, and would have done the same with the girls, but they were afraid of the jeers of their friends who could not have endured such a queer accomplishment in them. So even though father wanted to actually provide this education for the girls did not like it because their acquaintances or their friends actually laughed at them when they are going to learn. So now you can understand what kind of a place, what kind of position was actually given to education. The girls were not educated. As a result of that, number of problems occurred when it comes to industrial England, right? So the girls, they did not like to get education, and all the other girls actually laughed at them when they are going to learn words and language. All Overcourt was just such another hive as Canty's house. Drunkenness, riot, and brawling were the order there every night and nearly all night long. Broken heads were as common as hunger in that place. Yet little Tom was not unhappy. He had a hard time of it, but did not know it. It was the sort of time that all the Overcourt boys had. Therefore, he supposed it was the correct and comfortable thing. So the situation was not nice, right? Rampant with violence, right? Always they heard, Tom actually heard a lot of fights and brutal situations, violence. So little by little, Tom understood that this is my neighborhood. Like whether I like it or not, I have to face this, right? I have to be familiar with this. With the time period, what happened, he was actually very much familiarized with this particular situation. When he came home empty-handed that night, he knew his father would curse him and thrash him first, and that when he was done, the awful grandmother would do it all over again and improve on it. So his grandmother and his father will definitely beat him if he did not come to the house without some with some money. So definitely, Tom has to beg here and there, and he has to earn some amount of money, and he has to present that amount of money to his father or grandmother. Then only they can use that for their drinking purposes. So if he did not bring that, definitely his abusive father will punish him. That is what he says. So now we can understand what kind of troubles and tribunals actually faced by Tom. We will move on from there. When he came home empty-handed that night, he knew his father would curse him and thrash him first, and that when he was done, the awful grandmother would do it all over again and improve on it. That way in the night, his starving mother would slip to him stealthily with any miserable scrap of crust she had been able to save for him by going hungry herself. Notwithstanding, she was often caught in the sort of treason and soundly beaten for it by her husband. Now, this is very much actually heartwarming, where Tom's mother used to give something that she has saved, right? Without eating, she has given whatever the morsel of food that she received, and she has actually provided to Tom. She has provided that small piece of food to the Tom, right? So soon after, Tom's father, or else this particular husband, got to know about this. What did he do? He actually punished this particular young lady, and he has beaten this particular lady. This is how actually this particular husband, or else Tom Canty's father, treated Tom Canty's mother. So you can understand this typical situation is very much similar to the lower class or lower class of Sri Lankan society. We see the same situation, right? So when it comes to these slums, right? If you refer to the slums, most of the time this situation is very much common, right? This situation is very much common. No, Tom's life went along well enough, especially in summer. He only begged just enough to save himself, for the laws against the mendicancy were stringent and the penalties heavy, right? So the laws against the mendicancy, here mendicancy refers to begging, right? Stringent means tough. So, however, right, the legal system did not allow for begging, right? The legal system did not allow for begging. It was an offense, right? It was an offense, right? Laws against mendicancy were stringent and the penalties heavy. Penalties means to the punishments. So he put in a good deal of his time listening to good Father Andrew's charming old tales and legends about giants and fairies, dwarfs and genii, and enchanted castles and gorgeous kings and princes. So now what actually happened? So even Tom Canty did not engage in this process of begging. So instead of that, what did he do? He went to meet Father Andrew. He went to meet Father Andrew, right? After meeting Father Andrew, he listened to about different types of stories regarding these giants and fairies, dwarfs, the genies, enchanted castles, and gorgeous kings and princesses. His head grew to be full of these wonderful things, and many a night as he lay in the dark on his scant and offensive straw, tired, hungry, and smarting from a thrashing, he unleashed his imagination and soon forgot his aches and pains in delicious picturing to himself of the charmed life of petted prince in a regal palace. Now, what did he do there now, my dear students? That particular Andrew, the father actually taught him different types of stories related to these kings and queens and princes and princesses. So soon after he heard them, he created visual imagery in his mind and he thought that, okay, one day I will become a prince, right? I will become this kind of a prince. I will live in this kind of a court, this kind of a palace. So when he is imagining all these things, whatever the pain, whatever the hunger that he actually had in his life, he forgot about them, right? He forgot about them. So now you can understand Tom Canty can be identified as a very much imaginative child, like the what do you call in Lumber Room we find Nicholas, right? Very much similar to Nicholas. So he is a child with a lot of imagination. Soon after he came home, even though his father actually punished him, he did not care. He did not think about begging and all. He did not think about his future. He thought about the beautiful stories actually taught by Father Andrew about different princesses, princes, and all these things, right? So he took them into his mind and he thought about that. And then he thought that, okay, one day I will become a prince, right? One day I will become a king and I will live in this kind of a palace. So these stories actually created some kind of visual imagery in his mind. So that is why we say that education is important, right? We discussed about the ignorance, right? So why education is important? Because education can create some kind of revolutionary difference in your heart, right? That change will be a revolutionary one. That is why it is very much important, right? So we will move on from there, my dear students, right? So what actually happened? The dark on his scant and offensive straw, tired, hungry, and smarting from a thrashing, he unleashed his imagination and soon forgot his aches and pains in delicious picturing to himself of the charmed life of a petted prince in a regal palace. One desire came in time to haunt him day and night. It was to see a real prince with his own eyes. So little by little, it grew to a certain extent that he wanted to see a real prince. He wanted to see a real prince, right? So it came to a certain situation that little by little, gradually, it developed into a certain extent, and he wanted to see a real prince. That is what actually happened, right? So he spoke of it once to some of his awful court comrades, but they jeered him. Jeered means laughed at him and scoffed him, blamed him so unmercifully that he was glad to keep his dream to himself after that. So he actually explained about this for the set of comrades who were working inside and outside the court. So they said that this is actually one of the most terrible bullshit things we have ever heard. You should never try to do that, right? So your dream is not going to become a success. So as a result of that, he kept his dream with him forever. He actually wanted to see a prince for his naked eyes. When he explained about that, these comrades said that your dream is not going to become a true dream. So you should shut up and wait. You should never inform about these things to people. He often read the priest's old books and got him to explain and enlarge upon them. His dreamings and readings worked certain changes in him. By and by, his dream people were so fine that he grew to lament his shabby clothing and his dirt and to wish to be clean and better clad. Clad means a young boy, right? So after reading these books, what actually happened? So this is important, Putta, pay your attention. After reading books, after reading a lot of books, or else you can say after getting proper literacy, what actually happened, he felt disgusted about himself. He did not like his clothes. He always wanted to change his identity. But unfortunately, he did not get the chance. Now, this clearly shows you when it comes to education, why education is important. Yes, you want to pass your O levels and A levels and you want to enter a university. That is true. But apart from that, my dear students, education will definitely teach you how to become a different character. How to become a different character, right? How to change your identity. Now, Tom Canty needs to change his identity. So all these things actually came to his mind because of literacy, because of reading. So the more he read, the more he read, he realized that, okay, I have to change this. I have to change the way of living. Now you can understand, right? So Tom could always find something going on around the maypole in Chipside at the fairs, and now and then he and the rest of London had a chance to see a military parade when some famous unfortunate was carried prisoner to the Tower by land or boat. One summer day, he saw poor Anne Ascot and three men burnt at the stake in Smithfield and heard an ex-bishop preach a sermon to them which did not interest him. Yes, Tom's life was varied and pleasant enough on the whole, right? So he actually saw different types of punishments actually given to these people. And my dear students, you have to remember in this particular novel, we discussed about the judiciary, right? The judiciary, or else about the certain decisions given by judicial system. So Mark Twain is actually trying to criticize the judiciary or else the judicial system as well. So here he explains that he saw how certain people were killed, certain people were punished, and certain punishments were given to them. So they were very much brutal. Those were incidents that a small boy should never witness. Those were certain punishments that the small boy should never witness. But here, what we can understand, Tom has actually engaged with a lot of experience with his age. He matured himself with a lot of experience because due to his social status, due to his neighborhood, and due to his poverty, right? He experienced a lot. Most importantly, he experienced a lot more than Edward Tudor. By and by, Tom's reading and dreaming about princely life wrought such a strong effect upon him that he began to act the prince unconsciously. So now his readings actually affected to his subconscious mind, and he thought himself that I am a prince. Right? So whenever he goes here and there, he acted as a prince. He had a sword and he acted as a prince. Now you can understand how these readings and all these books actually read by him created some kind of an effect in his subconscious mind. Now he is thinking himself that, okay, I am a prince. Now these young boys, and especially young boys, right? These young boys actually, when they go to the market and they try to bowl like, what do you call, Lasit Malinga or Dale Steyn while they are going, right? Because they are thinking that they are Dale Steyn or Lasit Malinga, something like that, right? While you were walking to the shop or somewhere like that after coming from the tuition class, right? Even you do that bowling part and everything, right? So you do like that because in your subconscious mind, you think that you are Dale Steyn or Lasit Malinga or something like that. So Tom Canty also came to the conclusion that, okay, right, now I am the right prince, right? All these things that which he has read actually created some kind of a picture in his subconscious mind. His speech and manners became curiously ceremonious and courtly to the vast admiration and amusement of his intimates, right? So his friends were really, they were amazed, right? Because his language, his manners, and everything he has changed, right? Even the walking, he changed, right? He changed. So his ultimate motive is to become a prince. That was the dream that he had. So he changed everything. So his friends, right? Even they could not realize what actually happened to this particular boy. But Tom's influence among these young people began to grow now day by day, and in time he came to be looked up to by them with a sort of wondering awe as a superior being. And then what actually happened? The Tom thought that he is superior and all his friends are inferior to him. This is what we call the mentality, right? So Tom came to a certain situation that he thought that all these people, right, all of my friends, they are actually inferior to me. Now I am a superior person because in his mind he is a prince. That is what actually he thought, right? Okay. Then he seemed to know so much, and he could do and say much marvelous things, and withal he was so deep and wise. Tom's remarks and Tom's performances were reported by the boys to their elders, and these also presently began to discuss Tom Canty and to regard him as a most gifted and extraordinary king. So what did these children do? They went to their parents and they explained about that. Father, don't you know our friend Tom Canty, now he is behaving like a prince. His behavior is something like this. So even the adults actually showed some kind of concern about the behavior of Tom Canty, right? So they discussed about that, and they discussed about this extraordinary feature. Full-grown people brought their perplexities. Perplexities means actually their wondrous questions, right, to Tom for solution, and were often astonished at the wit and wisdom of his decisions, right? So grown-ups, they came with their questions, and Tom actually provided some practical solutions for them, right? So they were really amazed with the knowledge actually possessed in Tom, right? So Tom received some kind of respect in the society because of his education. Now you can understand why you must learn, why you must get educated, because whatever the profession that you engage in, when you are educated, no one can challenge you. Can you understand now? Tom used to read and write, and he learned something under Father Andrew. As a result of that, now what has happened? He is emerging as an extraordinary person. He is emerging as an extraordinary person in the society. So even the grown-ups, they brought their problems to Tom Canty, and Tom Canty actually provided some practical solutions. Right. So we will move on from there, right? And were often astonished at the wit and wisdom of his decisions. In fact, he was become a hero to all who knew him, except his own families only saw nothing in him. So he became a very attractive person to the outsiders, but not to his family members. So, however, his family members did not recognize him, just like your family members, right? You can be a hero, you can be a great person to the outside world, but your family members, your elder brother, your younger sister, elder sister, they won't recognize you, right? Same thing happened to him as well, right? Privately, after a while, Tom organized the royal court. He was the prince. His special comrades were guards, chamberlains, equerries, lords and ladies in waiting, and the royal family. Daily, the mock prince was received with elaborate ceremonials borrowed by Tom from his romantic readings. Daily, the great affairs of the mimic kingdom were discussed in the royal council, and daily his mimic highness issued decrees to his imaginary armies, navies, and viceroyalties. Now, what actually happened? Tom started behaving like a prince now, and inside his community, he created a what do you call? They have given the word here. He has become a mock prince, and he created his special royal court. This is actually not the real one. He is special. He made himself a special royal court. That is what actually happened. So it is kind of a mini kingdom. In this particular kingdom, he actually advised people. He behaved like the king, and he had all the servants for him, like the lords and ladies and chamberlains, guards, right? So he became the prince. So now in his imaginary world, he has created something like this, and even the people were very much enthusiastic about this because they were mesmerized and hypnotized by the knowledge actually possessed by this particular boy. After which he could go forth in his rags and beg a few farthings, eat his poor crust, take his customary cuffs and abuse, and then stretch himself upon his handful of false straw and resume his empty grandeurs in his dreams. And still his desire to look just once upon a real prince. But even though he has engaged this kind of a work, he had only one dream in his life. The only dream that he had, my dear students, to find a real king, to see a real prince, right? That is his ultimate goal. In the flesh grew upon him day by day and week by week until at last it observed all the other desires and became the one passion of his life. One January day, on his usual begging tour, he tramped despondently up and down and region round about Menacing Lane and Little East Cheap, hour after hour, barefooted and cold, looking in at cookshop windows and longing the dreadful pork pies and other deadly inventions displayed there. For him, these were dainties fit for the angles that is judging by the smell, they were for it had never been his good luck to own eat one. There was a cold drizzle of rain, the atmosphere was murky, it was melancholy day. At night, Tom reached home so wet and tired and hungry that it was not possible for his father and grandmother to observe his forlorn condition and not to be moved after their fashion. Therefore, they gave him a brisk cuffing at once and sent him to bed. For a long time, his pain and hunger and the swearing and fighting going on in the building kept him awake, but at last his thoughts drifted away to far romantic lands, and he fell asleep in the company of jeweled and glided princelings who lived in the vast palaces and had servants slamming before them. Of trying to execute their orders, and then, as usual, he dreamed that he was a princeling himself. All night long, the glories of his royal state shone upon him. He moved among great lords and ladies in a place of light, breathing perfumes, drinking in delicious music, and answering the reverent obeisance of the glittering throne, and it parted to make way for him, with here a smile, and they are not of his princely head. And when he woke in the morning and looked upon the richness about him, his dream had his usual effect. It had intensified the sordidness of his surroundings a thousandfold. Then came bitterness and heartbreak and tears, right? So even after his father actually punished him, even after his grandmother punished him, he did not take that into consideration because he always had the imagination of becoming a king. Whenever he went to sleep, he had that imagination in his mind. So he always thought he had only one dream. The dream is to become a king, a prince. So soon after he went to bed, in his world, in his imaginary world, he became a king. He went to faraway lands, right? He became a king and he gave orders to all the noble people, and he had his own army, he had his own palace. But soon after he came to the real world, he realized that I'm still living in this suffocating world. My dream will never come true. So chapter number 2 clearly explains about the beautiful ambition that the small boy has received. But unfortunately, because of his social class, right, because of his social status, because of the social disparity, he will never be able to achieve his dream. So Mark Twain is actually trying to explain the fact that even though Tom Candy is very much eligible to the kinghood or else kingship or else the post of prince, unfortunately, he won't be able to receive that place because of his neighborhood, because of his family background, because of his social status, right? He's an ideal character. He has all the experience and he has all the knowledge, right? So he can become a king, he can become a prince, definitely. He had an ambition, but unfortunately, that ambition will be an ambition forever. That dream will be a dream forever that will never come. So, my dear students, today we discussed about the second chapter and we will move on to the first chapter and we will write down. Right, okay. Right, you guys can start and write down. At the exposition of the novel, the narrator suggests us how the birth of two boys who were born on the same day, same country, brings different requirements to their families. Tom Candy was born to a poor family who were rampant with violence and poverty and never needed a boy. Tom's birth was a burden to the family, whereas the birth of Edward Tudor brought immense happiness to the family. He will be the next king. He will be able to take the dynasty of the king. This suggests a clear contrast, which also suggests one of the main themes of the novel, which is social disparity. The class difference between rich and poor, right? This is the first theme that we are going to discuss in this particular novel. So you have to highlight the quotation. A boy was born to a poor family of the name of Candy, who did not want him. On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor, who did want him. All England wanted him too. So from this particular quotation, we can highlight one of the major themes of this particular novel, that is social disparity based on financial conditions. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Brawling means Buddha fighting. It's a very normal, natural word. Brawling is a very popular word. It's fighting. Right. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. We are writing the note about the chapter number 1. We started with chapter number 1. Hurry up and write down. Right, did you write? Please pass me a message. Shall we move on to the next part, Puta? Right, is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Right, okay, I hope you guys have completed. Right. The narrator furthermore explains to us how everybody enjoyed the birth of Edward Tudor. Even the citizens who lived in London enjoyed the birth of Edward. There was a reason for them to be enjoyed, as Edward would be the next successor of the royal family. Tom Candy is just a pauper from the streets. According to the writer, his presence will only bring more chaos to the family. It is quite attractive how the writer has utilized contradictory words in the following paragraph to highlight the enjoyment of the people in several different ways. The people went nearly mad for joy, mere acquaintances hugged and kissed each other and cried. Right, everybody took a holiday, and high and low, rich and poor, feasted and danced and sang. High and low, rich and poor, right? So contradictory words are actually brought up together in order to create that highlight the happiness actually enjoyed by them. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message after completing the note. Right. If you have finished, you can leave the meeting. So the recording will be available tomorrow. We will discuss the rest of the novel next week. We have to write the teacher's note regarding chapter number 2. We have finished chapter number 1. Chapter number 2 reading is also finished. We have to write down some special quotations. We have to extract from that particular part in order to highlight the themes, right? We will discuss about that. So we will meet next week to discuss the rest of the other. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. You can leave the meeting if you have finished.